Hi everybody, it's Cheryl with Silver Sage Studio, and today I wanted to show you this art journal page that I created. I had some difficulty pulling this baby together, and I wanted to continue with the video and share it with you, even though there were some times I just really wanted to walk away from this page. It's actually something that I really enjoy about art journaling. My commitment to art journaling is to relax, go with the flow, and not stress out when things aren't working the way that I want them to. So as you can see here, I started with a page that already had some swatches of color on it, and it also, I'd used a stencil with some heavy body gel medium there to give it a little bit of texture. That was all already on the page. So I covered that with a light layer of gesso and dried that, and so now I'm adding some acrylic inks and spritzing them with water to kind of move them around. Now, this is only one of many places where things were not working the way that I wanted them to work. I was really hoping that those inks would work their way around that texture and kind of show off that texture a little bit, and that just simply wasn't what was happening. So I continued to just add a little bit of color, add color, push it back a little bit, add some color, push it back a little bit, and eventually just decided to try something different. The truth of the matter is that sometimes when we're playing with art projects and trying to create something, things just don't always work the way that we want them to work, and that's okay. As you will see here in a minute, I decide that I'm going to try to use my Art Alchemy wax on this. It's a blue wax, and I really wanted to use that on an art journal page. I haven't used it a whole lot. Thought that this would be a good page for that to be used on, but as you'll see, it ended up just kind of looking like a hot mess when it was all said and done. All right, so here's where things kind of become a hot mess. So I'm using that wax. It's a gorgeous color. I love it so much. And I put it over the leaves, and I'm not really liking it, so I think it needs some more blue in the background maybe. And I just decide, nope, a big nope. So I'm going to go ahead and cover that with gesso and just kind of push that all back. I'm still really glad those layers are there. They do peek through the gesso, and so they end up working with the final project. So the thing that I try to remind myself of is that sometimes things aren't easy. Sometimes things don't work the way we want them to, but just relax and go with it and try something new. And isn't that a great lesson for art journaling? And isn't that something that I can remember in life? You betcha. All right, so this is the point where I go, yeah, this just really isn't happening. So I decide that I'm going to cover it with some gesso, excuse me. And okay, all right, now it's given me kind of a palette that maybe I can work with. It still has some texture on it. Doing a little bit dancing right there. And I'm pulling off some of that gesso, and again, I'm kind of liking it, but don't worry, I'm going to ruin it all over again right here. I'm mixing up some burnt umber acrylic paint with some glazing medium, and I'm going to cover that over the page. But the problem is the page is still wet, so I don't quite get the effect that I'm going for. This is the process I like to use when I've got some nice texture on a page, where that glazed paint, it seeps into the crevices, and then when you remove it, you've got this nice texture in the shadows. But again, it's not working, and so I try some more of that Art Alchemy wax. It's still not working, so back to the gesso. So I'm going back to covering the page with gesso, and again, I'm still happy that I have those layers underneath. They still add some visual interest to the page. I'm removing some of that gesso, and at this point, I'm happy that I have, again, a palette or excuse me, a base from which to work from. So I'm going to take that Art Alchemy wax again, and I'm going to rub that onto that textured leaf pattern that's on there. And at this point, I feel like, okay, I've got enough contrast between that blue of the leaves and that background, and yet the background is still kind of interesting with those colors underneath that gesso peeking through. So at this point, I feel like, all right, maybe this is going to work out. I'm not giving up. Now I'm going to frame the page with some of that yellow acrylic ink. I'm trying very hard not to be super meticulous here and try to make it look a little bit kind of relaxed and organic. And then it's time to move on to the next element, which is the typewriter that's going to go on here. I'm using this Tim Holtz die, and I'm going to cut it from the backing cardstock of that paper pad. With that cardboard cut out of the typewriter die, I'm going to start with applying a layer of gesso, and then I'm going to use a dry brush to put on some of that burnt umber brown paint. And there's my dancing again. The dry brush just puts down the paint with maybe slightly less coverage. You get a little bit of that texture from the fibers of the brush. And I thought that worked well for something like this that's supposed to look like at least a vintage, if not an antique typewriter. At this point, I'm not sure if I want to use the gold or the silver from the Art Alchemy waxes I have. I want to just brush a little bit on there just to give it some interest. So I'm testing out both colors. And I don't really think you can see it very well, but I decided I was going with the gold. I thought that worked better with the burnt umber. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit off camera there. This vintage look, this kind of distressed look, is not generally my style, but I really loved it when it was all said and done, and I had a lot of fun playing with this and just getting my hands messy and getting in there and doing some painting with my fingers. I'm going to glue the two pieces together using some gel medium from Golden. And super easy, I'm just putting some on the back of that and gluing it together. Going back to the background, I'm going to add some splatters using that turquoise color of the acrylic paints, the same ones that I used in yellow and pink earlier. So I've decided I'm going to include a sentiment on this, and this says, "We will come out of this better people and more aware of the value of relationships." I just wanted to remind myself during this time of COVID-19 and social distancing and quarantining and all of that crazy stuff that there maybe is something good that's going to come out of this. I'm not in any way saying I think it's good that people are going to get sick and suffer or lose a family member. None of that's good. But I do think we might come out of this valuing our connections with one another just a little bit more. So as you can see here, I'm just trimming this down so that it'll fit through the little slot there of the typewriter. And now I am distressing that little bit of paper there just to make it look more appropriate against that more antique-y looking typewriter. The two colors I'm using are Antique Linen and Peacock, and I did crumble that paper just a little bit and then did a little bit more distressing on it over that crumbling, and then those creases pick up the color just a little bit more and just gives it a little bit more interest. Now that I've got the typewriter adhered down, I am taking out these chalk colors, and I want to use the brown to add just a little bit more distressing around the edge of the page. It doesn't quite do what I want it to do. It works well on the gesso, but over that yellow, there isn't enough of a grit for the chalk to stay on. I can see that it, makes some difference, but it's not quite doing what I want. Now, before I go back to that border, I've decided that I need some more splatters. So I've protected my typewriter here with some paper, and I'm adding just a few more splatters. So I did a little research on those chalks that I used for the border and discovered that they're water soluble. So I am taking a wet brush and seeing what happens. And here you go. Here's what happens. In short, I really had a lot of fun making this page. I'm glad I worked through my challenges. Here's the final page. I had so much fun making this art journal page. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.